Mashreq is one of the most successful, if not the most innovative banks in the Middle East. We are based here in Dubai, but we operate in 13 other markets in Asia Pacific, UK, and the US. The challenges that banks face in the Middle East relate to one of over-competition. We've got 51 banks, a target market of 4.5 million, so you can imagine the amount of price competition goes around. But more importantly and fundamentally, I think banks, the challenge we face is not keeping up with the times. And since this is a payment conference, I think we've got to contextualize it. The entire payments business is extremely valuable for global banking. It's $1.4 trillion worth, growing at 15–20%, making up almost 30% of all bank profits. The point to make is everyone's after that pie. The telecoms, the hardware manufacturers, and the big internet companies. And the winner will be the entity that really has the best engagement with customer, delivers the best experience with ubiquity and security. So banks here in the UAE really need to continuously innovate, improvise, and start working towards a mobile-first strategy to keep up with the evolving behavior, if not demographic, of the UAE market. The web 10 years ago was the search web. The web 5 years ago was the social web. The web today is the mobile web, right? Look at the UAE, 4.5 million target market. Smartphone penetration at 76%. Cell phone ownership at 220%, right? So that's every individual has more than a cell phone. Cell phones are growing smartphones are growing at 1.5 times the rate of growth of tablets or iPads. So everyone is mobilized, everyone is socialized. Increasingly, customers are seeking to experience and engage with financial services on the smartphone. And banks simply have to deliver an experience that is smartphone enabled, right? It's very difficult to transform a brick and mortar experience onto the web and a web experience onto mobile. The mobile first strategy actually works grassroots up in delivering functionality, security, and an experience that caters to that small screen, which is extremely intelligent, but very cumbersome to use if the design is not acceptable. We take pride at Mashreq of being renowned to be the most innovative bank in the GCC, if not increasingly in the EMEA region. And we see innovation as a means to differentiate ourselves, create meaningful, long-lasting relationships with our retail, small business customers, and hopefully one day that'll translate into higher revenues and enduring revenues, right? So embracing technology and keeping very closely in touch with the changing, evolving needs of the customer and the customer's behavior. Mashreq's embarked on a whole bunch of pretty successful innovations, namely the E-Cube experience at our branches, where we've transformed the brick and mortar, yesteryear, paper-based, counter-oriented experience for a customer into a state that is almost a gamification of the banking experience. i.e., you walk into a branch, there is no vouchers to be filled, you punch in your transaction on iPad suitably located within the center of the branch, there's no paper, no brochure, you have screens on the walls of the branch, you tap, you touch, you gesture, you get your information, that information is transferred to your cell phone, your email box, or printed if you so wish. Simulation tables for you to figure out how much you can afford, how your mortgage should be structured, or how your investments should look, which class you should invest in, what kind of returns you seek, annuity or standardized. And accordingly, the output of that interaction is transferred immediately into your digital inbox as you wish. The entire experience, therefore, is seamless. It's one that is pleasant, and it's one that is contemporary as we live in the digital world. Most importantly, the technology in our branches is not closed loop. So when you get to our branch in Dubai Mall, for example, you can buy tickets at Real Cinema in the branch, right? So it caters to the entire lifestyle needs of a customer. So that's the whole branch experience. 9 of our branches have been transformed at significant cost using state-of-the-art Microsoft 7 interfaces, but we believe in time customers will get to understand and appreciate that experience. The big innovations really happening in the payment domain. And here in the UAE, it's interesting that for a country so advanced, with this government so futuristic, we still allow a 70-year-old plastic to operate payments, namely the plastic credit card, right? That is evolving fast into mobile payments. And recently we've launched something called Tap and Go, which allows 300,000 credit card holders of Mashreq to tap their phones at about 25,000 merchant point of sales with a top end limit of about 100 dirhams at this point in time, which can be modified based on customer need. And no signature, no paper, just go. And if you've traveled on Sheikh Zayed Road, you'll realize how important time is to a resident of the UAE, right? On the flip side of things, cash on delivery is an extremely big part of commerce in the UAE. And we've challenged that. And we said, why do you need to get that money out? Why do you need to hand over cash? Why do you need to get your hands grotty before you get the fingers on the pizza, right? So we've launched something called PayPort, which is the only EMV compliant, 3 or 4G enabled point of sale terminal, which a guy on a scooter or a courier carries on his belt. A credit card is slipped in at the point of transaction, and voila, the transaction is complete. Your actual signature is with your finger on the PayPort device, and your transaction confirmation is an SMS to your phone, right? In similar vein, we've added value to lifestyles of customer. We've delivered something called Salam, which is the only point of sale reward redemption program in this country. Almost 70% of our customers are now engaged in Salam. You may have heard of our funny jingles on radio these days. It's very popular. It's a give back to customer on a holistic bank relationship in a bid that generations of trust are directed towards Mashreq's counters. And finally, Flavors, the other application that we launched recently, allows our customers to gain value from travel and entertainment, dining, outlets across the UAE, and avail of discounts, avail of value adds, avail of freebies. The interesting thing about the app is that it gives you choices, and it also has a geolocator, which routes you to the location either by car or by foot, right? What's in store? New technologies emerging, right? The most viable technology, most popular cell phone in the UAE, unlike other markets, is the iPhone, right? And that's a reflection of the salary levels in this market, if you will, the affluence of this market. iBeacon and iTouch are two technologies we're experimenting with. So on a completely transparent level and with customer consent, before the end of the year, we will launch digital one-to-one marketing proximity with specific tailor-made offers to each individual on the back of our back-end CRM systems. So it's basically linking those two, right? I think the secret to Mashreq's success is basically its management team. My background is I'm a payments and e-commerce guy. I used to run PayPal for Asia Pacific before this role. My entire management team comes across from multinationals, largely from Asia. So it's been a great test of getting expertise from outside, improvising and delivering great innovation in this market. Before we launched technologies like eCube in the branches, I took a bunch of people down to Singapore, Hong Kong, Sydney, Tokyo, and we took a look at other banks that had tested technology. My biggest fear was you invest a whole bunch of bucks in the front end and you have an empty branch where no one engages, right? Now that's a real fear. So we had to create technology that's relevant and engaging and something that's an experience similar to what people do with their apps on their iPhone, right? So it's very important to understand the need of the customer and his behavioral patterns. A huge amount of money is spent on continuous customer research. Old-fashioned focus group interviews, by the way, are extremely valuable because you get so much insight through open-ended discussion. But more importantly, we are draconian when it comes to service standards. By the way, we've been rated as the best service provider 2 years in a row, better than Emirates Airlines, by the way. We're #1, and that's because we measure every moment of truth. We measure it internally from a SLA achievement level, And we measure it externally through surveys that give us what we call net promoter scores on every experience that customers have. The interesting thing is our internal scores are always worse than our external scores, which is a good thing to have. So we are harsh on ourselves, and we continuously challenge ourselves to manage the end-to-end process. You know, the Mashreq experience has been a true test of small is beautiful. We're the fifth largest bank in the country. We're not the giants that are owned by the government, but because we are privately owned and we are more dynamic, we are hungrier. I've been in the payments business 30 years now, and lived in 6 countries and worked with 5 different companies, and I'm still young. But jokes apart, I purposely did not attend the opening keynote address in the payments group. I went and attended the mobile piece, and I think it was a wonderful experience. And the coverage we got from the first 2 speakers on mobile theory and then on Google Glass was really eye-opening. It was fantastic. Then I thought the forums were pretty well attended. And what was most amazing was the participation amongst service providers. It's huge. I spent a lot of time with our friends at MasterCard, and you know, the global head of innovation was down, so he showed us a few things that we're going to launch very soon as well. The only downside is the convention areas where we were talking and engaging, the acoustics were terrible. And I guess in a hall like this where noise reverberates, you know, black curtains can't do the trick.